All right, so again, as I said, today is an overview of what we plan to do this year, and we also have some updates, and so I'm hoping that folks are on the call that can give us updates in different sections. But first and foremost, if you could go ahead and answer the poll and let us know what state you're from. This is helpful to us on the National Committee just to see who's tuning in, and also helps us understand if there's outreach efforts that we need to do in different states, and we really just enjoy seeing who is on the call from all across the U.S. All right, so take a minute. And I'm having trouble seeing the chat box today, so if somebody could help me out with that, that would be really great if you all have that ability. So thanks everybody for letting us know which states you're from. We're going to go into some welcome and announcements, and I know Charlotte is on the call. So Charlotte, could you talk a little bit about the training needs study and the survey that's going to be coming out and when it closes?
Sure, and I'll also keep an eye on the chat for you and let you know if there's any questions that come in. Yeah. So I really hope everybody has gotten an invitation, an email from your state coordinator to be part of the EMG Coordinators Training Needs Study. This is an initiative with the Extension Master Gardener National Committee to assess what are the training needs of our coordinators, particularly when it comes to volunteer engagement. So it's not asking about horticultural things, but working with volunteers all across the country. And we're going to use the findings of this study to help prioritize some of our efforts to develop professional development and support for coordinators, both local and state coordinators all across the country. So the first invitation went out in mid-December, and another one went out last week. And the way we've been sending it out is through the state coordinators to send to local coordinators. There was also a blurb about it in the e-news blast that went out today that you should have received today. So you can see the link that's there is in today's e-news blast. So when you click on it, it just gives you a little information about the survey, and then has the link where you can complete it. It'll take up to about 20 minutes, but a lot of people are telling me it didn't take the full 20 minutes. So we would really appreciate everybody participating, because it'll really help us understand what the training needs are. And we're going to compile the results for each state and share that with the state coordinators. So not only will it help at the national level, but in your state, it could help decide and set some priorities for support you receive in your state as well. So I encourage everybody to actually, after the webinar today, to go ahead, if you haven't already taken the study, and go ahead and get it out of the way. It will close February 7th, so you have a little bit of time. So if you don't have time today, just put it on your to-do list. And I'll pick up that link and drop it in the chat box. All right, thank you, Nicole.
Yeah, thanks, Charlotte. So I do understand this link went out to state coordinators and regional representatives, but it's open to county, local coordinators, and so it's very helpful to you and to the rest of the committee if folks complete the survey.
Absolutely, and so we have about 166 responses right now. Actually, about 121 of those are complete responses. And I'll go ahead and mention we've got some leading states. So Illinois was #1 right now so far for having the most responses, followed by Tennessee and Wisconsin. So thanks, Mike's been doing a good job there promoting it. But we want to see representation from every state, both local coordinators and state coordinators, absolutely.
All right, very good, thank you. So I'm not sure if Natalie is on the call, but I do want to remind everyone that the next Extension Master Gardener Coordinator Conference will be this year in September. You can see that there's a new flyer that came out recently to promote it. It will be in Knoxville, so the conference is opening September. It looks like they've got different tracks for coordinators. And you should be able to get a call for a workshop proposal and posters in February, and registration opens in March. So you may sign up on the Facebook group for updates. They're doing a fantastic job of keeping us informed. But also maybe after this webinar, put a note on your calendars to remind yourself to kind of pay attention to see when that call for proposals and posters comes up, so you can go ahead and submit something for the conference. Does anyone else on the committee want to talk about that? If not, we can move on. Okay, I think we're good. All right, and Missy, I believe you might be on the call too?
Yes, I'm here, yeah.
Okay, I was wondering if you wanted to speak a little bit about the website, just to remind folks that it's available, on what kinds of things they might find on the website, and maybe some future plans for the other website as well.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. So the Extension Master Gardener program is working to really compile and collect all of our information on an informative website for everyone. That website is, it's still in an editing process, but it's pretty much ready to go for you guys. The URL for it is mastergardener at extension.org. I'll go ahead and put a link in the chat in just a moment. When you get to the website, we're using it for a kind of a dual audience purpose. One is for our internal audience, which is, of course, state and county coordinators, and the other is for our public audience. So for our public audience, we have some information about the program, but it's primarily used to shuffle people over to their own state program. And then for our internal audience, the mission of the Extension Master Gardener National Committee is to provide support for coordinators so that we can have effective volunteer programming on a national scale. And so towards that effort, we've got some great information about where you can engage and how you can engage with the Extension Master Gardener program, upcoming events, and there's also a resources tab. When you click on that resources tab, it's going to take you over to a resource website where you can get information and best practices about how our colleagues nationally are doing recruitment, onboarding, training. It's got a lot of tools and resources in it. Check it out and let us know how and where you'd like to engage.
All right, thank you. And if you haven't gone to the National Committee website, as Missy mentioned, there's lots of great documents and resources. There's the repository. You can find helpful information on things like how to communicate impact, resolve conflict, diversity, equity and inclusion, and many other things. And of course, updates on the overall strategic plan. So those are some really great resources available to all of us. And John Orrick, I'm not sure if John is on the call, but I think most of us are subscribed to the e-news blast. This is the monthly communication email from the National Committee, and it will provide updates on the regional national conferences, when to submit abstracts, opportunities for professional development. Then, of course, if you as a coordinator have anything that could be helpful to the rest of the group, you could send it to John, and he can post it in the e-news blast as well. So it's sort of a two-way street for communication, and if you have new hires or new coordinators that you're aware of, then please let them know to subscribe to the e-news blast so they stay up to date on what's happening in our world of coordinating Master Gardener volunteers. Okay, do we have any other announcements from across the country? And if you have announcements, you may use the chat box, or you can unmute your phone and let us all know. Okay, well, hearing none, I do see several links posted in the chat box. So what I will do is after the webinar, I'll send a copy of these slides, and then I'll also pull the links out of the chat box and put that in the email as well. There's a few people who weren't able to attend today that have already asked about a copy of the presentation. So we'll get that out to everyone. And we do have a comment from Kara that the new website looks great, and she found it by accident, and it was the first one in the Google search. So great feedback. Thanks, Kara. Okay, so I would love for everyone to save the date for the upcoming discussions. The National Committee meets on a monthly basis, and we try to come up with different topic ideas and webinar presentations that we think could be very helpful to coordinators. Also, if there's updates from a policy or reporting standpoint, that could be helpful to you as well. And we really would love for you to bookmark these dates and times so that you could be on the calls. They're always the third Wednesday of the month. Sometimes we might cancel one if we have a speaker cancel or if there's extenuating circumstances or scheduling conflict with the conference. But for the most part, they're generally the third Wednesday of the month at 2 p.m. Eastern. The link is there. I'll send this out as well with the meeting ID. And if you miss a webinar, you may go back and watch it on YouTube. We have a lot posted, including some archived recordings from previous conferences that are still helpful to folks. So you could go and get caught up just in the event that you miss a webinar. But of course, we really appreciate it when you're on the live call and you can, talk and contribute as well. So again, for the upcoming discussions this year, we're trying a few different things based on feedback from the National Committee and also from you all. So we have general topic ideas that we'll be doing on a monthly basis, as we always have been. However, if you have a discussion item, a question, or something you need feedback from the group, it is perfectly fine to submit that to me ahead of time, and then we can allocate time in the monthly discussions to go over that. If it is something that is, sensitive information, we can always stop the recording and discuss the question at the end. So we are a resource to each other, and we can use the monthly webinars for that opportunity. In addition, I'm going to really work on sending the slides out ahead of time so that you all can review that and then have some information to join in the discussion. And perhaps you might have some question prompts throughout the presentations that we can just kind of get everyone more engaged and learning from one another. So if you have any ideas for webinars beyond what we're going to talk about today, feel free to reach out to me. And then if there is something that you'd like for us to address with the group, we can do that as well. Okay, so some of the discussions that are coming this year from the National Committee for some updates and some policy assistance and reporting guidelines are these here. We have, in October, we're going to focus on the National Committee updates, status of the strategic plan, and coordinator awards. And is there anyone on the call from the National Committee that could talk a little bit about the coordinator awards and why that is so special?
Nicole, I'm happy to pop in on that. This is Missy Gable from California. The Coordinator Awards are an award program that actually got kicked off by Mike Maddox in Wisconsin in 2018. And we've worked on trying to really adopt this as a standard practice. And we are very close to being able to post all of the information about the Coordinators Awards online. But these are awards that are going to be conferred every 2 years. We have 4 award categories. They include creative excellence, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Both of those are really project-based awards. And then we have an early career award for coordinators who have been in their coordinator position for less than 10 years. And then we have a distinguished career award for individuals who've been in their position for 10 or more years. We're really excited to be able to recognize the excellence within the Extension Master Gardener community of our coordinators. And so the awards program is going to be rolling out. I think you'll start seeing that very, very soon. Announcements through the 2020 Coordinator Conference Facebook page. And then we'll also be posting that information on the website in the very near future. But this is a great opportunity for us to recognize our colleagues who are doing really amazing things that help us all learn from one another and really raise the level of professionalism and excellence of the Master Gardener program.
Thanks, Missy. So this will be a great opportunity for any of us to apply for awards. The qualifications will come out pretty soon about that. And then, it's a great opportunity for us to highlight what's going on and learn from each other in different states. So we're really excited about that. We also have a group of folks working on parity and reporting requirements for civil rights. And that could be something that might help us just as a refresher of what's required, especially when working with Master Gardener volunteers. And so that is something that will be coming up this year. We'll have a niche update from Pam Bennett. And anyone on the committee want to talk about the link to niche? Can you all explain that a little bit?
Great. If there's someone else who wants to hop in on this, please don't hesitate to shut me down. This is Missy Gable again from California. NICH is the National Initiative for Consumer Horticulture. We have presented on this topic at these national webinars previously. So if you want some historical information, you can check that out. NICH is an effort that we are well immersed in, the Extension Master Gardener program. It's an effort to really create a community of practice around a commodity. Our commodity is hard to put into one basket because it's so broad. So we talk about our commodity as consumer horticulture. This niche effort includes academics, Extension Master Gardener program folks. It includes industry individuals, and we're all working together to help bring consumer horticulture to every household, also bring resources and a kind of awareness and from the federal level for our commodity group. So if you think about like citrus, they have a citrus board. Consumer horticulture has never had a board like other agricultural commodity groups. This is our effort to really create that board, create the community of practice, and do some really exciting work that we hope will bring additional resources to the Extension Master Gardener program ultimately.
Great, thank you, Missy. If you want to learn more about NICH, there's a great website. Mike posted that in the chat box. We'll send it out after the webinar. There's wonderful infographics that you can use for schools, workplaces, and just in general, the benefits of plants. And it's a really nice link to Extension Master Gardener program. So thanks, Missy. Appreciate that. Also, we have a diversity, equity, and inclusion subcommittee, and I know in most of our programs, this is something that we struggle to achieve. In my county, you know, parity and diversity and inclusion is something that we're working on all the time. And so the subcommittee has let me know that they could report what they're working on and provide us tips and ideas on how to incorporate that and do a better job of it in our programs. And so that will be later on in the year. As many of you know, Charlotte Glenn is working on the survey, which is the link that she sent out, and she also did research for her dissertation on competencies, which we reported in a previous webinar, which is archived on the YouTube channel. But you can probably be aware that when we get the survey results, we might find some unique findings, maybe things we already knew, and so Charlotte can give us feedback on that. And we'll also be using the results of that survey to identify potential training needs in the future. And again, the monthly discussions will have tips and resources available to you because this is an opportunity to provide professional development, discuss volunteer management, and just different things that you might be able to apply to help you in your job. Okay, so those are the ones that we are definitely going to have this year, and I now want to go into some of the topics. People have done a really great job of emailing me different ideas or putting them in the chat box at certain webinars, and I sort of combed through all of that and collated them all into like these main headings. And so what we would like to find out from you all are what are your priorities based on this list. And of course, if you have something that's not on the list, you can put that in the chat box too, and then I'll record that and send that out to everyone. I would like the folks who aren't on the call to be able to vote as well and give us feedback on what the priorities might be. So I'm going to launch a poll, and hopefully you all can help me out with this. I hope it works. So let me know, are you seeing the poll and are you able to make selections? Okay, so it looks like it's working. I just want to explain these one by one so we're all sort of on the same page. The first one is volunteer project coordination. So when you have a big project or a big campaign, you know, how do you coordinate volunteers? What are the tips and tricks? Delegation, all the components that we need to do. Many of us understand a lot of this, but there could be opportunities to learn more best practices or ways to make things easier to do and coordinated better amongst our volunteers. And so volunteer project coordination is one that came up. The second one that's been getting a lot of buzz is how to write great newsletters or jazz up your existing newsletter. That came through on a few webinars, and some folks have emailed me personally and said they could use some help with this, or they actually have some tips that they would like to share with you. And so I thought that might be an interesting discussion that we could have as a group, and perhaps even highlight some examples of great newsletters. The third one is planning and sharing a successful National Volunteer Week campaign. National Volunteer Week is in April. I'm going to say that I wish in past years I did a better job of really highlighting Master Gardener volunteers. And sometimes I think that the fact that it happens in April catches me by surprise. And so I don't want that to happen this year. And we were thinking, you know, prior to April, this could be a good opportunity for sharing a successful campaign and highlighting the work that our volunteers do and who they are as people too, and their impact in the community. Of course, at almost every conference that I go to, conflict comes up as a top issue in extension volunteer programs. And so there are many different ways to tackle conflict. And so this is something that folks say that they could use additional training in. So if you feel like that's a top priority, then by all means, go ahead and mark that. More of a recent suggestion is food safety for Extension Master Gardeners and community gardens. So food safety when you're teaching classes to the public, food safety among volunteers, what happens when you're picking produce and you're sharing that with the community or sharing that in a school. So that's kind of an area where I think there's some risks involved, and it's emerging, and people are really taking a look at that and identifying policies that would work for their local programs. The next one is updating your mission statement and marketing materials. How do we avoid language and scientific jargon, making things to where it does have that diversity, equity, inclusion, and anyone can read it and understand it? And how do we use effective language to not exclude people from our programs? Capturing change, return on investment indicators, which ones do we use, which ones do we not use, what's been successful, and communicating survey data to our reporting agencies, to stakeholders in the community, which I think we could do a better job of, and also communicating it back to our volunteers. The next one is volunteer recognition, different strategies and tips, maybe things we haven't thought about, best practices or new ideas that we can implement, especially on a budget, because we all have different budgets and different sized volunteer programs. So that is something that's been coming up, and you all know that recognition is important for retention. So it's a big thing to focus on when you're coordinating folks. And the last one that's on the list that came through from you all are communication strategies. How do we tell a story of what we're doing? How do we communicate those impacts of our volunteers? Really highlighting individual volunteers and explaining the successes of our programs, but what are better ways that we can communicate our story and even use that to reach out to different audiences and recruit folks to our programs that maybe aren't always participating. So, having said that, I see a lot of folks have been answering the poll, which is great. I'm going to let the poll keep running for a little bit longer. Does anyone want to unmute your phone and provide some other suggestions that we need to capture for this webinar? Or you could use the chat box.
This is Mike. I've always enjoyed topics regarding like instructional design and how we're engaging master gardeners in the learning process, be it online or face-to-face. I also think it's important to do that through that lens of diversity and equity, of what are the potential learning styles of folks who are not in the program, and how can we do that.
Mike, did you say different learning styles?
Yep, different learning styles, learning preferences, but yeah, all through that lens of instructional design, and then I would add through the diversity and inclusion lens.
All right, those are great suggestions. I'm making notes too as we're chatting. And I see Gail has posted fundraising. Gail, thank you for reminding me about that. That was one that came up in a conversation with the National Committee, and I forgot to include that. So that's another really great point. The way that it was brought up in the National Committee meeting was talking about fundraising and how it links back to your reputation and your program success, what you're able to do as a result of your reputation, and also making sure that you're fundraising for purposes or goals or specific things that you want to implement, and you're not fundraising just to fundraise. So that's an excellent point. And Julie has said volunteer recruitment and retainment. Those are always great topics. I appreciate everyone putting the comments in the chat box, because what we might be able to do is, even if these are smaller things, we can hit on them throughout different webinars and bring them up. Or perhaps on some of these, we are considering doing a panel discussion and bringing in different speakers so we can hear perspectives from across the country and different ways that people do things. And Eva says volunteers and youth education programming. Could you expand a little bit more on that? Youth education programming. I don't know if, oh, Eva says, how to work with different generations. All right, that's another one that comes up. Different generations and episodic volunteers. And partnerships, how to form successful partnerships. That partnerships one might link back to the fundraising topic. So those are all great suggestions. I hope I didn't miss any. I think I see Rhonda says return on investment with extension. I agree, that's another great one. There's different tools. And so sort of how I anticipate this working moving forward is we will identify folks that might have some perspectives in these different topics. I will send out some suggested questions or discussion questions ahead of time. You all can send me back what works for you. I'll collate that for the group and include it. And if you yourself feel like one of these topics is something that you are, comfortable talking about, you might consider yourself an expert, or perhaps you've learned enough and you think that you've learned the hard way, or you've got some strategies that you could share with us, then please let me know and we can get you on a panel or be the speaker. Okay, so a couple of other comments. I'm sure you all can see the chat box, but I just want to make sure that we can talk about each one of these, because I will update the poll when I send the archive out to include your suggestions as well. So Julie says successful ways to use social media over other outlets. All right, and that social media might link back to communication strategies too, because that was another one that people indicated they needed some assistance with. And Bill says fundraising is a good topic, but need to have folks understand there are different rules in different localities, so check for permits, etc. That's a great point. How to involve Master Gardener volunteers with 4-H or other youth programming. Eva, since you brought that up, are there folks on the call that find that it is easy or difficult in your state to link Master Gardener volunteer programs with 4-H programs? Could you all take a moment to answer that? So I don't see a lot of responses, so I'm wondering if that means that it's easy for all of you to link 4-H. Okay, now we're getting some. So Mike's comment, he's surprised at how few 4-H EMG partnerships we have. I would say the same thing. I find that sometimes, I think in Florida, it could be, just a lot of folks have things on their plate, and that we could do a better job of linking the two. So great comment. And Brett says it's challenging because he's the only staff in the entire state. Okay. Insurance policies and insurance coverage. All right, point taken. And it's very easy in Virginia. So it sounds like Virginia is doing great things. And it is a given that Extension Master Gardeners are involved in educating the youth, and they also work with FFA. All right, great points. I will say here in Florida, we also work with FFA, and we do some programs with 4-H. but I think those partnerships could always be strengthened. So great comments, and thank you guys for taking the time to answer that. All right, and I believe that we have almost all of the suggestions included. Going back to earlier comments, and you all can see this in the chat box, Charlotte mentioned the leadership skills of volunteers and inspiring, empowering them to take leadership positions. I think that's a really great topic idea. Personally, I think, when you have volunteers who are engaged and they have a project that they're very happy about, or it's sort of like their signature project, that could be good or bad, but a lot of times it can keep people engaged over the long term and help them be a strong part of the program. So great suggestion. And Katie says that based on Charlotte's research, there's a possibility to create a hiring toolkit for EMG coordinators. Charlotte, that might be something that you are considering when you're talking about the competencies and things. You'd probably make that available to folks throughout the country.
Yeah, that's something we've talked a little bit about, or kind of started that conversation, and a lot of interest in that, maybe coming up with some best practices for hiring and some questions, a question set that would help target people who have the right personal skills and have a good skill set and that matches what the needs are. So that'll definitely be something that comes up this year.
Okay. All right, and Mike also says it depends on your state. Okay, so great comments. Thanks everyone for the additional suggestions, which I will include, and there's one more that came in, and feel free to keep sending them because I will pull these out and add them to the existing ideas. Katie says she'd love to hear counties are doing virtual help desk work. How do we remain, how do we keep outreach to the public where they're at? That's a really great suggestion too. So virtual help desks, I'm making a note of that. All right, so as you can see in the poll, can you all see the results? If you can see the results, thumbs up or say yes in the chat box. Thumbs down, okay. Now can you see them? Nope. All right. So this is going to be user error because I'm not as comfortable with doing the polls. So I'll just sort of let you guys know what the top choices are, and then know that that might change after we send this out to everyone on the listserv. We may have some other comments coming in. All right, so the top choice selected was volunteer recognition on a budget. Sounds like we need some inspiring ideas on how to recognize our volunteers and make sure that we can do that. It doesn't matter what the size of your county is or your budget. So that's great. The next one is capturing change, ROI indicators, and communicating survey data. So let me say the percentages. Volunteer recognition, 72%, capturing change, ROI, survey data, 52%. Updating your mission statement and marketing materials, that came in third. Oh, I'm sorry. Nope, I missed one. Managing conflict, 64%. So recognition's number one, conflict is number two, capturing change ROI is number three. The next one would be project coordination, followed by updating your mission statement and marketing materials. Then we've got planning and sharing a successful National Volunteer Week campaign, followed by food safety and how to write great newsletters. Those actually were a tie at 24%. So this is very interesting because I personally, this is why we do polls and extension, because, we have an idea of what we think people might want to learn. And then in my case, a lot of times they want to learn, like, when do I prune a rose bush instead of IPM? So it's always fascinating. I would have thought that, newsletters would be a top choice, but that's at 24%. However, it is something that we can highlight and maybe have some fun with and share some examples. So everyone, thank you so much for participating in the poll and giving us your training ideas. Myself and the committee will take a look at this and try to identify speakers and narrow it down for each month, and then we'll roll that schedule out for you. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. And we had about 92% of people participating, so that's really great. Thank you all. Our next coordinators discussion will be February 19th, and you can go ahead and set the date, bookmark that on your calendar. We will probably talk about the campaigns for National Volunteer Week or successful project management. I'm working on the speaker for that, and we'll report back to you and let you know which one we've been able to schedule. Does anyone have, this is a good stopping point for any questions or comments, does anyone have any additional questions, comments, burning ideas that you'd like me to send out to the group, or any feedback on the webinars? If you do, please put that in the chat box or unmute your phone and go ahead and talk with us. Okay. All right, well, seeing none, what we will do is archive this webinar. We post them on the Extension Master Gardener Coordinator YouTube channel. I'll send out the link, but here's the link in case you want to screenshot it or just remember that. And I also just wanted to do a quick review that sometimes I get people who switch jobs, or there's a new hire in their department and they're wondering, how do we subscribe to the listserv and get these updates? And so you can subscribe to the eNews Blast with John. That's one way. The other way is through the extension.org community of practice. So I just put these slides in here, and we do incorporate them on all of the slides. But if you have a colleague who wants to join, or you are leaving your position and someone else is taking over, these are the steps and ways that you could join the community or leave the community, and so that way you can update your preferences on the listserv, which is what I use to send out the monthly newsletter, or I'm sorry, the monthly webinar information. All right, so with that, I want to say thank you to everyone for being on the call today and taking the time to provide your suggestions for training programs, and we will work on that, get that schedule out to you. And please reach out to me or any member of the National Committee if you are interested in presenting or there's a topic that you'd like to hear more about. So I'll stay on the call if anyone has any questions or needs anything else. But I hope you all have an excellent week. See you in February, and thank you so much for being on the call today. All right, thanks everyone. I'm going to go ahead and archive the recording and send out an email with the slides and the discussion items. Take care and have a great week.